In 2021, 4 geologists went missing in the Ailao Mountains of Yunnan, China, while conducting a forest survey that was supposed to take them less than a day. Their bodies were found 8 days later, all of them smiling and with no apparent cause of death. The victims were all healthy young men in their physical prime who had plenty of supplies to last them for their journey. Who or what killed them? Back in 1959, Igor Dyatlov's ill-fated expedition into the Ural Mountains led to the deaths of 9 hikers and the birth of a cultural phenomenon. Despite experts debunking nearly every aspect of what happened that snowy night, the sinister reputation and wild theories remained. A group of people in the wilderness, experienced in survival, no less, acted uncharacteristically bizarre in the very last moments of their lives. Why? The story of the Ailao Four is eerily similar. On Saturday, November 13th, 2021, the Kunming Natural Resources Comprehensive Survey Center deployed 4 geological surveyors to conduct a forest research survey in the mountains. The 4 men were Zhang Yu, 32, Liu Yu, 29, Yang Min, 27, and Zhang Jinbang, 25. According to interviews, they had experience with wilderness survival. They left from the west side of the mountain, planned to turn around upon reaching the east side and descend the same way they came. If the weather and trail conditions were ideal, the route would take about 6 hours. If they were not, it could take up to 10 hours. The group's supplies included 4 water bottles, 2 packs of egg yolk pie, 4 cans of porridge, 1 bag of chocolate, 1 bag of melon seeds, and 4 packs of chicken wings. Although some argued that the food selection was light and mainly snacks, they easily had enough to last a day and a half, 6 times their fastest possible completion time, and almost 4 times their slowest possible time. Their equipment included 4 RTK devices, which provided geospatial location information, 2 shovels, 3 machetes, disposable raincoats, a portable power bank, and a gasoline-filled water bottle. All of this was divvied up into 2 backpacks, one for the equipment and one for the food and other supplies, worn by Zhang Jinbang and Zhang Yu, respectively. The last time they had contact with anyone was with their driver at 12:59 p.m. on the 13th, about 4 hours after they left. The team did not return that day, nor did they return the following day, Sunday the 14th. After calling the men and hearing nothing, the driver contacted the local government, and a major rescue effort was launched. It had hundreds of people, several cars, and 5 drones, who all thoroughly combed the area for the team. On Monday, November 15th, one of the search and rescue teams found paint marks, discarded machetes, scorch marks on the ground, and a small shack with disposable raincoats and leftover food. On November 17th, foggy conditions forced the search to pull back. They picked up again on November 20th, exactly 1 week after the men had left, but this time the search effort only had 24 people. Finally, on November 21st, a drone with thermal imaging found 3 bodies. The following day, the search and rescue team arrived at the location and found all 4 men dead. Finding the bodies, however, only led to more questions because one of the members was completely naked and all 4 of them had died with smiles on their faces. After investigating, Chinese officials gave a statement that all of them had died of hypothermia-induced cardiogenic shock. Okay, was that really what happened? Maybe that'd be more believable if this incident was the first of its kind in that area. Let's rewind a bit to July 1993. The morning routine had passed, and the hottest part of the day was just ahead. Fu Kai, A resident of Shiyaku village on the south side of Ailao Mountain returned home to get some tools. When he entered, he saw his wife on the floor, twitching and unconscious. He grabbed her and rushed to the hospital to see what was wrong with her. Later that day, he would end up in the same condition as her, and both would eventually pass away, never waking up from their comas. The two had no history of disease and seemed to have died for no clear reason. On the same day as the funeral for Fukai and his wife, an entire family in the same village also died under similar circumstances. This created a mass panic and led to many rumors, speculations, and superstitions about the village. The incident caught the attention of officials in Yunnan province, prompting a medical investigation in Jindong County, where Shiyaku village was located. Investigators looked at the disease. At first, they thought it was myocarditis, inflammation of the heart, but dismissed that idea because myocarditis doesn't cause sudden death from a healthy state. The investigation found nothing, and the lack of progress meant the medical team had no choice but to leave. A few days later, a villager named Li Fukai suddenly died in his sleep. That same day, his brother's wife, Fu Xiu, also died. A few days later, his father, Li Changmei, followed suit. All three died in the same way as the previous deaths, and just like with them, no clear cause was found. Over the next 2 months, 5 more people in the village died of the same mystery illness. The news ended up reaching the national government after Yunnan province officials told them the situation. Medical officials were once again sent to Shiyaku village, where 14 people total had now died. Their official theory was that Keshin, a heart disease, was responsible. Selenium was given to the villagers as a way to treat Keshin, but it had no effect and the villagers kept dying. Discouraged but not defeated, the medical personnel came up with a new theory based on the autopsies of the villagers. Most of the deaths happened between July and August, during China's rainy season. Coincidentally, the villagers often collected rainwater to drink. So was that it? Was the water contaminated? The medical team seemed to think so, and treated the water. This worked. Until 2002. Villagers once again started to fall ill, leading to 8 more deaths. Eventually, officials took the extreme measure of evicting every resident from the village, leaving it abandoned. Fast forward to November 2021. The 4 geologists were found not far from Shiyaku village. Could they have caught the same illness from the 1993 incident? Let's try and figure out what happened. Officially, the government said that the 4 men had died of hypothermia-induced cardiogenic shock, meaning that their hearts stopped beating due to the body's core temperature dropping below a survivable level. From November 13th to November 14th, the temperature was about 9 to 11 degrees Celsius, or 48 to 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Considering that those days also saw heavy rain, it's possible they were hit by the downpour and then caught out in the open while still soaking wet. Lightning was also a theory that went around on the internet. The 4 men seemed to have fallen and died facing the same direction. Combine that with the report of rain that day, lightning might have struck all 4 of them. All it takes is for one person to be hit, and the voltage can pass to anyone standing close to them. However, it's easy to rule out this theory because, while burn marks were found in the investigation, none were found on the bodies. Now comes a pretty interesting theory: strychnine poisoning. Strychnine poisoning happens from exposure to strychnine, a poisonous alkaloid, and it's found in the fruit that grows on the strychnos tree. When strychnine enters the body, it causes muscle convulsions and shortness of breath, among other symptoms. Significant exposure leads to death. And upon death, it's known to cause rictus grin, a smile on the face of dead bodies caused by a series of muscle spasms in the face. Strychnos trees are native to India, Southeast Asia, and China. Coincidence? Possibly, the geologists came upon some strychnos seeds and ingested them by mistake. The Ailao Mountains are home to hundreds of edible fruits, one of which is the pomelo, a round, greenish-yellow citrus fruit that bears a striking resemblance to the poisonous fruit that grows on strychnos trees. But regardless, why would they rely on eating local fruits when they had packed more than enough food for themselves? The search and rescue teams confirmed that they still had rations left when the bodies were found. Maybe it was a spur-of-the-moment choice, because they thought they found a pomelo tree or another fruit that was safe to eat. If that was the case, what a tragic and fatal mistake. While this theory fits the 2021 incident quite well, it's not as plausible for the 90s incident. If the common denominator was something as obvious as a fruit that everyone who had died had eaten, then someone would have caught on way sooner. The investigation from the 90s implied that there was something in the water. Perhaps the geologists drank from streams in the area, picking up the same mystery illness that the villagers had almost 30 years earlier. This is possible. They had plenty of water bottles with them, and streams would have been seen as a logical place to refill. Or maybe it was something in the air. This next theory is my own, so take this with a grain of salt. Let me rewind one more time to August 21st, 1986, to a different part of the world. In the northwestern part of the African country of Cameroon lies Lake Nyos, a massive crater lake nearly a mile wide. On that day, a pocket of volcanic gas trapped below the lake escaped. The normally blue waters turned rustic red, and a thick cloud of carbon dioxide pushed through the water and escaped into the air. Being heavier than air, the carbon dioxide fell back to the surface, suffocating any living thing within a 16-mile or 26-kilometer radius. The incident led to the deaths of over 1,700 people and 3,500 livestock. A limnic eruption, as this natural disaster is called, is triggered by landslides, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or anything else that shakes the earth near a body of water with gas buildup below it, such as volcanic crater lakes. Coincidentally, there are two lakes near where the geologists died, Fushan and Arhai, as well as a couple of rivers that snake through the mountains. The two lakes don't seem to be crater lakes, and I don't know whether it's possible for this to happen with a river. The hole in this theory is that limnic eruptions are extremely rare, with only 2 recorded instances in recent history, and both times in Cameroon. The odds of it happening in China are slim, and if it did, it would have made headlines. Furthermore, the 2 lakes I mentioned are a decent distance from where the 4 men were found. If a cloud of carbon dioxide was able to kill the 4 geologists, meaning erupting high into the air and falling close enough to them to suffocate them to death, we would have heard of a lot more people suffocating to death that day. Or maybe there's a much smaller body of water near where they died, and it's just not big enough to show up on satellite imagery. Once again, this explanation loosely fits the 2021 deaths, but doesn't quite match up with the 90s deaths, because certain people and families were dropping dead, while others around them were totally fine. And this makes me think, what if they are just 2 separate incidents with 2 separate causes? The only connection between the 2 is that they happened in the same area. And I guess you could say they died in similar ways? We don't know for sure with the geologists. We don't know if they did just die suddenly, and I didn't see any mention of smiling corpses in Shiaku village. I don't have many sources for the Shiaku village events, so I'll wrap up that mystery with my best educated guess. The medical investigators were definitely onto something. I really do think it was something in the water. The Ailao Mountains are known for being fertile for farming, and as a result, they have quite a few terrace farms and scattered villages. As someone who used to spend his summers in rural Asia, I'm willing to bet that these farms and villages relied exclusively on rainwater, as previously mentioned, and wells and local streams as their main source of water. Over time, exposure to the contaminated water and buildup of the harmful substance led to the deaths. This explained why villagers died consistently over time and why families tended to die together. They drank out of the same well, ingesting fatal amounts around the same time as one another. When the deaths started happening again in 2002, maybe it was a different strain of whatever disease it was. Or maybe it had evolved to be resistant to their treatment. As for the geologists, the most straightforward explanation is that the team was caught in the rain and couldn't dry off or find adequate shelter in time. For one reason or another, they were unable to use their RTK devices to call for help. A blog writer insinuates that the geologists weren't as experienced with survival as we've been led to believe. It's hard to say how much gasoline they had exactly, but the fact that it was stored in a water bottle suggests they didn't have that much. After all, a standard water bottle is 16.9 ounces. And the raincoats? I guess that really depended on the quality of the material. According to a news source, the jackets cost about 40 cents. So I'm guessing they were worse than those disposable ponchos you find at gas stations, because that price is really cheap, even for Asia. Despite the many theories, the official one is the most plausible. The simplest explanation is often the correct one. After leaving on their route, the four were caught in the rain. Due to their lack of proper rain gear, combined with the cool mountain air and a cold wave that was hitting China that month, they succumbed to hypothermia. They tried to start a fire to warm themselves up, but the effort was fruitless. Due to weather conditions, geographical interference, or water damage from the rain, they never called for help using their RTK devices. One of the bodies was also mentioned to be naked, which is a common effect of the last stages of hypothermia. The person begins to feel really hot and often removes their clothing shortly before death. The only detail this theory doesn't explain away is how or why the men's bodies were smiling. But I suppose some things remain as mysteries for longer than others. My heart goes out to the families of the deceased. Once again, I think we have a case that seems quite spooky at first, but once you look at the details closely, you get a mostly decent and complete explanation. As for why people act irrationally, even if they're highly experienced, like in the case of Dyatlov Pass, people just panic sometimes. No matter how disciplined you are or how many years you've done something, you're still human. And humans feel fear. Some mysteries remain entirely unsolved, such as the many groups of hikers who die or disappear in the Siberian wilderness. I do a deep dive on 3 ill-fated expeditions with an eerie similarity to the Dyatlov Pass incident in my other video here. Thank you for watching.